Grant Walter Osheim. I was born in Halleck, Minnesota, May 6th, 1919. I'm a first generation in this country. See, both my parents were born in Oslo, Norway, and it really shook them up when the Germans took it over. You don't remember, though, you would remember. I remember that. I was just a little guy then, but when Germany moved into Norway and all the rest of them, it was really, yeah, my folks came over here in about something like 1910, 12, somewhere in there. About five of us fellows in Halleck, we were playing cards, and it came over the radio that we were attacked. And so the following, let's see, in 3 months, I enlisted. 1942, March 42. I think there was two of them, but we were separated. They went into the infantry and engineers and stuff like that. I was the only one that was taken to the Air Force out of that group.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's really something. I went to Fort Snelling, which is in Minnesota, and from there they sent me to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis, for the basic training, about 4 months. And then I was assigned to an observation group at Pope Field, North Carolina, right out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I was there for about 3 months, and then I took several examinations and went on into flight training, gunnery, turrets, bombardier, bombing training, and so forth. And that was about 3 months. Came back to my base in Pope Field, and from there they assigned us to a staging area, Salt Lake City, Utah. So we took a troop train from there, which was about 5 or 6 days to get to Salt Lake. And then they assigned us to bomber groups. So at that time, I was assigned to a B-24 group, which was just being set up in Casper, Wyoming. We opened that base in Casper. And so we trained there for approximately 3 months. From there, we went to Boise, Idaho for 3 months. See, when you're on a flight crew, you're getting all of your orders out of the operations office. You know, they want to know where you're at all the time. You might go to town, but if they have to get a hold of you, they want to know where you can get back up if you're supposed to fly. So I walked into the operations officer and was going to get a release to go to town, And Jimmy Stewart was the operations officer, first lieutenant. What a guy, I said, this is impossible. He said, yeah, it is. Yeah. And within a year's time, he got his own group, like this fellow that I pointed out here, got his own group over there, and he was a commanding officer. He was a full colonel in a year's time, Jimmy Stewart was. He was a pretty good pilot, and he didn't go through cadet training. He was a private pilot himself before he came into service. And they took and checked him out, and he was okay. When Ronald Reagan was president, and they had a special activity going, and I saw this, and then they had to write up about it. So Ronald got up and he said, he said, we have a special guest here tonight. It was Jimmy Stewart. He said, General Jimmy Stewart. And so Stewart said, sir. He said, sir, I'm not a general. He said, I'm only a colonel. And Reagan said, as of now, you're a general. He was 1 star. He was a brigadier general, when he passed away. They seemed to get with it right away. We had some real good boys in there. And no, it wasn't too difficult, I would say. They were seasoned pilots as well. And even when you think about it, in cadet training, you could pilot training about 6 or 8 months, you know, which today it's 3, 4 years or whatever it is, you know. And a bombardier, you know, about 2 to 3 months. And aircraft gunnery and all that stuff, it's anywhere from, you know, 6 to 8 weeks. They put them through. Then we put our group together, our personnel together, 10 of us. And some of us had been flying together, and at the last minute we had to assign the ball turret gunner and a tail gunner right after we left Scottsbluff. And we flew over to England. There again, we put in about a month of training of flying and familiarizing their way of forming in groups, taking off and forming over England. See, the thing there is incredible. It'd take you about 4 hours to get to altitude loaded with bombs circling, because you couldn't fly in there. They'd shoot you down as soon as you hit the main coast, you know. So we had to get anywhere from 20 to 30,000 feet before. And when you're loaded with bombs, you're just circling and trying to get up there. We lost several climbing to altitude, like I told you, circling for 3, 4 hours. And in the meantime, a lot of times it was just soup. You were flying in clouds. You were definitely all instrument, you know. And sometimes I know 2 or 3 crews that trained with us, they run into each other up there. Of course, that was it. I was the armor gunner. I was just kind of anybody having problems with their turrets and guns and bomb sites, bomb racks. It was my job to try to see what's wrong and get it functioning. I flew the nose turret several times on the B-24. Yeah. You're sitting out there all by yourself, way out in front. Don't see a thing. Oh, you look around, you might see the prop out there at the outboard engine. That's about all. Everything was at altitude, so you had a rough time with your oxygen and everything else. There wasn't any pressurized cabins where everything's wide open, so we had oxygen masks, and they froze up off and on all the time, so you had to keep breaking them loose, keep the ice on them. And that's just the way it was. It was about 40, 50 below zero up there. We had electric flying suits plugged in, but you know, if anything happened there, if you got an anti-aircraft or anything, shrapnel, it'd cut that off. Of course, you wouldn't have any, but we were pretty well, we had a pretty good uniform on. The B-24 probably did a lot more damage than the B-17 over on our bombing raids. The B-24 carried about twice as much bomb load as what the B-17 carried, where they carried like 2,000-pound blockbusters. We'd carry 4 of them. We'd use every bit of the runway. The wheels were still spinning when they hit the end of the runway, you know, just barely getting off. And our turrets and the rest of it were, I would say, superior to the B-17. Sometimes it was required that we try to fly formation, but see, the B-24 again had more speed than the 17, so we had to throttle it down, you know, to stay in wherever your position was at. I think we had somewhere about 400 to 500 of B-24s. And of course, 17s had more than we did. There were 2 groups, you know, 2 divisions rather. You know, the biggest assignment and the toughest assignment back then was in the 8th Air Force to go after Germany, bombing the mainland. See, We were the first ones to start daylight bombing. And before that, the English were bombing at night, you know. And they said that we'd never be able to do it in the daytime, too vulnerable. But we did. Of course, we lost a lot of them. First one, everything happened so fast that, boy, you just aren't staying, you're not with it. It takes a little bit, you know, before you catch on. And that's when you're vulnerable too. You get yourself shot down. It would be aircraft factories primarily. Try to hit those to cut down their production, you know. And then also the docking areas where they brought their submarines in, destroyers and this sort of thing. Yeah, that would be our main project. And then their rail system too, to cut down, you know, moving equipment. And of course, Berlin was heavily protected, but we bombed right outside of Paris too. And Bremerhaven, that's one of their seaports, very important one, submarine pens. And let's see, Regensburg is another big manufacturing plant, you know, area. And oh yeah, we'd come to, and then the next trip you went over, we'd see those cities off, and they were still on fire. They were still burning, you know. But we'd have another target that we were going after that day. I know, I think it was Regensburg, I think it was several times I saw that thing was just burning all the time. You wondered how they were able to keep going like they did, Germany. Just unloaded the bombs on them, and then of course England was doing the same thing at night. It was real rough for them, I'll tell you. Their food situation, we furnished them with all kinds of food over there, of course. And their cities, we were at Wendling was our air base, and about 15 miles from there was Durham, I think it was, East Durham. And the Germans just wiped that out practically. Just wiped it out. I'd say probably 50,000. But we drove in there one night in Jeeps, and all along the streets, the buildings were just shambles. They really took a beating over there. England did, but they were still coming on. In London too, of course, everything was what do you call it? No lights in London. I know a couple of times in the hotel we were at, I know definitely one time, a bomb came through all the way, about I'm going to say probably 6 or 8 story building, went all the way to the basement and didn't blow up. The American airmen that was bombing over there, we had the red carpet service. They couldn't do enough for you. We'd go to London and they'd have the best hotel to stay in and all this stuff. It's really something. They treated like you were something special. The longest raid we had was to Berlin, and I believe we were on 13 hours on that one. That's a long time back those days, you know. And we cruised at about 175, 200 miles an hour. We had the P-51 when we went to Berlin, and we pulled into Berlin on our bomb run. The P-51 was circling up above us. They were flying in shuttles, you know, and they had wing tanks that could give them, you know, 300-400 miles further on the fuel, you know. And and then they fly, and they shuttle, you know. Somebody's about running out of gas, they head back to the base, and another group comes in. So when we got to Berlin, they were circling above us, the P-51s and the P-38s. P-38 was a twin-engine fighter. The Germans were real pros, and they had some real seasoned pilots. They'd been at war, you know, 2 or 3 years before we got there, you know. I know of a couple of instances why they followed us back to the base. They had a lot of guts too, you know. So when you turn your lights on to come in on the runway, they shot you down. and got away with it, flew back. They were vicious and good too. That FW-190, Focke-Wulf 100, was equivalent to our P-47 fighter, and I would say just about as good as the P-51, you know. And then of course they had Messerschmitt Me-109 and the 210, 110 and 210, and they were super, you know, really good. And they were twin engine fighters, but they also would carry a bomb or two as well, see? And they had things pretty well perfected. And then their anti-aircraft was accurate. They didn't take you long to zero in on you at the altitude and everything, you know, just like that. So they were real pros at what they were doing. I had a lot of flak stuff. One piece up in here, where the guy sewed me up. I think he was about the best doctor in the business. His name was Major Arms. He was a major, and he sewed me up, and you can't even see it. They took 45 stitches in this thing on the side of my face. Okay. Unbelievable. One time we came back and we had 600 holes in the bomber. It's a fact. Got hit by anti-aircraft. But a lot of this was not machine gun fire or 20 millimeter. A lot of it's anti-aircraft. Pieces as big as your fist, you know, when they explode up there, come through the airplane. And we got back, you know, you wonder if you're ever going to make it, you know. And the oil and it just smoking. We brought that thing back and got it back. They went to work on it right away, and within about 2 or 3 days they had it ready to go. I know on a couple of bomb runs we were at, so we had to, it's a picture of it in there, but we had the one in lead there, and there were echelons, you know, to the side. And sometimes when you pull in on the bomb run, you know, they kind of, you started backing off a little bit because you had to get in on, you had to get on that bomb run, no doubt about that, you know. And they had ways of checking that, whether you were goofing off or not. So anyway, the one flying right to our right, and we knew all those boys. And when we came around like this, he slid right under the plane right in front of him when at bombs away, and they dropped a load of bombs on him. Just in a second, blew the whole thing up, you know. You either do it or else. That was it. And we've talked about Japan and their suicide. That's just what we were. It's a suicide mission, absolutely. I still felt that we were going to make it. But boy, there's where you started to lose some of the boys. They couldn't take it anymore. So they were grounded, and God knows what happened to them. I think some were court-martialed. I'd probably say it's not all the time we were ready to go, but there wasn't one time, I can say this truthfully, that I thought we'd make it. The ground could always say, how do you feel today? Do you think it's going to be all right? I'd say, I think it's going to be okay. I just kind of felt that way. And you know, toward the end, we were losing, our barracks was cleaned out 6 times, shot down. Yeah. And then there were replacements coming in, and they got to where they said, where is Alfred II? What's the name of our plane? You saw him, Alfred's on the nose end of it, you know. And they said, we got to try to fly. I hope we're next to him. It seems like he's going to make it. That's right. Which was wishful thinking. Yeah, but we did, honestly. And all 10 of us made it back. come back to the States. It was just like, well, it was a job that had to be done. Somebody had to do it, and that's it. Just after they landed on Normandy, we came back. See, we'd finished our tour. And so just before they landed, we went in with 4 blockbusters all along to neutralize their anti-aircraft. we drop all 4 of them at once, not one at a time. It's really funny. And we did a pretty good job, I guess. They were back in the hill, or right off of the beach, where they landed. And so we tried to knock all that out before they came in. This is what they said over there, is that when we went in with those big bombs, they could hear them over in England exploding. I got back, see, and when I came back to the States, they gave us 30-day leave. And we were assigned to Santa Monica, California. They had, I think it was 5 hotels there, and it was strictly, it's right on the Gold Coast there, and it was for returning to service airmen, and that's where I stayed for a month. Anyway, that's after I had 30-day leave. So when we were up there, I had a letter, and I've got that somewhere here too, that the commanding officer and where we were flying out of, he sent a letter in my file. He said, here's a man that's eligible to go to our cadet school here. That's right. I've got it here somewhere. So what did they do? They interviewed me out there. They said, well, this guy still wants to fly. It must be something wrong with him. And that's what they were thinking. That's the thing. Anyway, so what they did, they had 7 high-ranking officers interview you, why you thought this, and they're psychiatrists and everything else, Anyway, so I got to go ahead, and so I went to assigned to one of our flight schools in Texas, and this was, I'm going to say August or July of 1944 when I came back, see. And so I went down, and we were in there about 3 months, and then it came out, they knew that Germany was going down and Japan would be next, and they had a lot of guys in pilot training. They said, I don't think we need them anymore, so they told us they'd ask us to resign. So I resigned. When they you recognize the combat crew that were doing all the bombing and everything, we had whatever medals you had, the ribbons you had here, and on the background it was a blue square patch that was sewed into your uniform, and all that indicated that you were an active air member bombing the mainland. And so they wanted the public to recognize you, and that's what one way they did. We had a blue patch around here, and they give you wings and all the medals and everything. I went to, it's a technical school back in, out of Ohio, outside of Cleveland, And then before that, I went to connected with General Motors. I went through, what is it? It's a engineering school that General Motors has, and I finished that one. So then from there, I took this technical school out of Ohio. Then from there, I went to General Motors Corporation in Chicago, right outside of Chicago, and they had the jet engine division there. So I was with them for about 8, 9 years there, and from there then I decided that's not for me. I mean, boy, you talk about a rough outfit, you know, pressure back then, my God. And so I went to, applied to the Prudential Insurance Company. And so I retired from Prudential. We came here in '58, and it's the best move I ever made. I've been married 3 times.
Okay.
This one, 16 years ago, I married her. My daughter, I got one daughter, and she graduated from DU, chemistry and biology. So she's with Uncle Sam. She's got a heck of a job, you know. And the boys were on. One of them is the CEO over here, the middle one, Doug. And Grant Jr. has, he's going on 30 years of active duty, and what do you call the other part? Reserve in the Navy. He's a lieutenant commander. I'd say probably 3 times where we got to see all of them. We met in, it's right out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, on the lake up there. That was back in 1977. Then we met over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then at Wichita, Kansas, the big airfield there. Yeah, down in Florida too. Down at, it's right outside of Miami. We met there one year. But like I said, I talked to the co-pilot, it's a year ago. And he was not too well at that time. And so, and he was older than I am. So, about 6 months ago, we got a letter from his daughter, and she said he just slept away one night, went to sleep, never woke up, she said. So I still have 2 back in Florida, and then myself. A crew that we'd gone through training with, we were on that same bombing mission in Germany, and I saw when they got shot down. And of course you didn't know. Some report came back, said they were MIA, some of them, but they didn't know how many were killed or whatever. And so on the first reunion, the pilot of that bomber, I met him. He was there. And so we really, really had a lot to talk about, you know. And I asked him, how did you make out? Well, he said, all the crew got out before I did. And when he bailed out, he broke his ankle when he hit the ground. He was that low, about 150 feet from the ground, and he made it. But I saw him going down, you know. Then he leveled it off a little bit, and then went in another spin. Then 1 or 2 parachutes came out. And but he was the last one to leave, which is the way it is, you know, and he made it okay. We have coffee just about every day over here, and there's about 6 or 8 of us, and there's only 3 in there that were in the military. The rest of them were civilians, and they could have got in the Korean War, you know, but none of them served. So, but anyway, we talk once in a while, and they'll ask me. They know. I think I've probably got I'm not bragging, but I think I probably got the best record there of activity and overseas service and that sort of thing. One of them over there served in Korea. He's retired from the military, served in Korea and Vietnam. And he's about 65 now. His attitude is, he was a sergeant, attitude's pretty good. I mean, he feels that he's had a pretty good route through, you know, living experiences and military. The military or World War II changed a lot of my thinking, you know, and most of it's for the best. It was good for me in a number of ways, and I'm sure a lot of them feel the same way. Uh, you know, it isn't all, you know, complete blank or, you know, you feel like you got gypped by going into the military or whatever, had to serve through the wars and all that stuff. But I think a lot of it was good for me. It'll build character with you. You can just about take anything and you'll still find your way out of it. And some of the things that happen, I feel like, you know, flying with Jimmy Stewart or some of these outstanding people and everything is a real privilege for me. Wouldn't you suggest that?
Yes.
Absolutely. Never happened any other way, you know. And you'd be rubbing elbows with some, you know, some real class in some cases. And it does something for you, you know. Really appreciate it, even though there were a lot of obstacles with it. It's been a great life, I think, and a lot to be thankful for, even though there's a lot of bumps along the way, too. All I can say is that the Lord's been pretty good to me. No question about that.
Out of your way too, Zach. Just keep off. Oh man, he's gonna come right over this way.
Yeah, I got him. wanna go again?
Me?
Uh-huh.
Not me.
You done that, huh? No way he would go.
This one would be a safer one because it's billed as a transport, and he's telling us it's never been out of service.
That old gentleman up there in the cockpit,
I bet.
that old man's got tears in his eyes.
And she's still going good.
Good.
Those are Pratt Whitney engines. Pratt and Whitney's, yes, sir, 1830s.
4 officers and 6 enlisted men. All sergeants.
Yeah, well, get over the side, maybe.
Was that a good one? You had me worried because I thought, what did we scare about we get the
You could chin up on them, you know, they were just rock hard.
You're up in the air, right?